Welcome to this Force Friday. Today, we are going to stay in our series on how important it is to see in order to draw. And today's focus is going to be specifically on shapes. So we put quite a list, I would say, of different ways within to see shape and examples of shape and what shape means all the way from silhouette down to the smallest of shapes in the human body and why we're doing it in this process. So yeah, I think I love shape. Personally, shape's really, really exciting to me. It's a very efficient way of drawing. I guess before I even go into this, one thing I'd love to comment on is how, again, shape is a shortcut for form, but in order to really make shape work well, the form itself has to be understood. And that's the seductive trap of shape. A lot of students, they like to go after shape without knowing the construction side of things, and then the shapes are flat, and it's very easy to see they're flat. And it may look like some of the pros you're watching are drawing from a shape standpoint, and they may be because they're that skilled. But you don't want to do that. What you want to do is take a look at their drawings and break them down constructively, right? Like deconstruct them, understand how they were built in order to understand how they got to the shapes that they got to. So with that, let's say hello to the gang. How's it going, everyone? How you doing, Mrityunjay?
I'm good, Mike. How are you?
I am doing well. It's another Friday. Can't believe how
Yes.
fast our days go. It is October, right?
Right. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, it is October already. I feel like it should be maybe March. You know, we're almost at the end of 2021. Before you know it, we'll be doing these through the holidays and it'll be 2022, right? Such a fast and crazy year. So how you doing, Swenley?
Great. Another favorite subject of mine, and actually the reason that I came to study with you.
Yeah. Yes, our relationship began with shape.
Yeah.
All right. We owe our old friend Shape a lot for connecting us. So yeah, it's good. All right, so let's see. Yeah, let's get to it. I have a lot to discuss, and in typical fashion, I'll head up today's conversation, and then from there, I'm going to hand it over to Swenley and Mrityunjay, and they're going to do a bunch of drawing for you. So let's get some of these things you'll have seen before in prior videos because it's all connected, right? All these things are tied into one another. So I start off with going back to the pizza, right? It's kind of another symbol of the pyramid in a sense, but the pyramid gives you like a hierarchical order, and it's usually top to bottom or bottom to top and so on. This one is a little simpler in a sense that we have a circle that's been cut into pieces. And I think it's really, no pun intended, but it's really edible or swallowable, right? Because it's so simple, right? The idea is if you want to understand a slice or an eighth of this pie, you first need to understand the whole. And then you break things down into fractions, basically, right? You go from halves to quarters to eighths, and that will get you to that eighth more accurately, right? Versus just having a full circle and trying to cut an eighth out of that circle. It doesn't work as well, much more challenging, okay? So keep that in mind as we go through today's conversation, because I'm really gonna drive this through this sort of big to medium to small thinking. So in the figure, I wanna start here actually. Well, not in the figure. Let's talk about, before we get to the figure, let's talk about silhouette. So in silhouette, silhouette, as you can see, is really, really important. We have a fork, a knife, and a spoon, right? So what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is, even if I didn't know the names of these things, I didn't know what they were, I can look at, and I can just say, hey, these have something to do with you eating, right? Let's say you were new to the planet Earth, and we put these down in front of you, and you're pretty smart, right? You could rationally try to start figuring this out, but you don't know what they are. I said, these are for eating. After a little bit of time, you're gonna figure out how these things are used. You don't need to know the names of them, but you're gonna know the thing on the far right helps you hold liquid. The thing in the middle is sharp, it's gonna allow you to cut, and the thing on the left is gonna allow you to poke food and bring it to your mouth, right? My point here is, even in something as simple as a silhouette, you see function, right? We can tell what these things do. these don't have form per se, like we were talking about, but even in their flatness and their simplicity, I'm getting a sense of their jobs, right? And that's really, really important. So when you have the model, which I'm going to show you later, the model taking on poses, is the model doing very specific jobs? Is the model being a fork, a knife, or a spoon? Like, what's the function in this particular pose? And you having the ability to convey that. And when you see the silhouette so quickly and so early on, it is extremely powerful to see the entire silhouette, the entire shape of a human form, okay? Let's kind of move on through this, right? So here we have a plane and a hummingbird. Again, function, right? This is man-made. You can see how much more rectilinear it is, right? We've got a giant tube with these triangular wings sticking out of it. It's like the jets are attached to the wings. Imagine if the jets were attached all the way to the back, which some planes have. Much more challenging if you think about the sense of leverage and friction and how that flies compared to putting the jets right on the wings. The hard part, I would imagine, about putting like the turbines on the wings is the weight, right? Because the wings are attached to the cylinder, right? So I would think if there's, not to scare anyone out of flying, because flying is really safe, but I was just going to say, if there's going to be a place that's going to break, right? You would think it would break at the wing, right? Where it attaches to the tube. So, but those jets, right? Those turbines are sitting there on those wings, propelling it from the wing standpoint. And it's kind of in the middle of the plane, slightly towards the front, right? You can see the wheels in this silhouette sticking out. So they're underneath the plane. You can tell that they are meant there to, allow the plane to land on the ground. And then we have a hummingbird, right? So you can see the shape of its body, its little wings. What I love about the silhouette of the hummingbird is its beak, right? Notice how long and thin it is. Very different than, let's say, the beak of an eagle or a hawk, which is meant to tear at meat or flesh, right? Here, all it's doing is dipping its long nose into flowers, right, to get nectar. So different design based on function, right? And you just got to love that. Look at cars. There's two different kinds of cars. Very, very different silhouettes, right? One is meant to be super streamlined and, barely cause any friction relative to air, right? And then we have a truck on the bottom. And you can see, well, this isn't a 4-seater. This is a 2-seater car, right? It's 2 doors. This has 4 doors, so you could fit, easily 4 people in this. And it's got an area in the back for you to store stuff, right? To carry it along. It's like a fancy wagon, a wagon with 4 seats in the front, right? And it sits on 4 wheels. So very different, right? They do different jobs, right? Again, function, hierarchy. Remember the pizza, big picture. What is this, right? What am I looking at? What is this thing? So Swanley brought these in. We were talking about, when can you tell that an object has a good silhouette or a bad silhouette? It's like, what is this? I don't know what this is. These are 2 spheres, maybe on a base. Maybe it's not 2 spheres. Maybe it's eyeballs looking down. It looks like anime eyes with teardrops on the bottom, right? Like, I don't know what this is, but they're speakers, right? Now, if I knew they were speakers and I looked back at this and someone said, hey, these are speakers, I might have imagined this, to tell you the truth. Here, let me sketch this in here for you. I might have imagined something like, oh, well, they're round. So maybe these speakers, maybe there's lots of little speakers on this, right, that are doing this. You see what I mean? So this way they're omnidirectional, right? I would have thought, well, there's speakers on the other side too, and it's probably pushing sound out in all different directions, right? Now, I'm not a speaker designer. Maybe there's a particular reason that a circle works for how it reverberates inside the sphere. But as we can see, they don't do this, right? They have one specific direction. Maybe they turn in that base. So, and maybe they're attached, but they turn in there. Maybe that's why it's designed like that, right? Believe it or not, this is what I think about. When I go to a store or I go to buy something, especially, for our house or for myself, I'm like, this design doesn't make any sense. Oh, that's cool. Look how they designed this, right? I love seeing the thought behind how the thing was made, that there was a designer involved and somebody put some thought in there that has made your life better, right? So weird, right? Weird silhouette. I have questions about why it is like that. I might even go up to a store clerk and go, hey, do you know why this is round? Like, what's the point? Why isn't this just a tower that's thin and with different facets? Like, what's so special about this being round, right? We go to these speakers, really clear, function super clear. We all know that we stick our head in this and this goes over our ears, right? And it's got this band over the top. It's ergonomic. It's meant for the human body. So we know that, boom, it's headphones, right? By the way, on a very short side note, to go on a tangent here, silhouette is so important in painting too, because look at this. This is not far from this. A little bit of light sourcing and some grayscale in this silhouette, and suddenly you have something that feels like it has form and structure, right? With just some tone. So pretty amazing, the tiny jump that goes through these two, okay? So last but not least, I have here this cast of characters. I wanted to just show you that not only does silhouette work for function of things, but it's also a way of us recognizing, right? There's recognition. The fork, knife, and spoon is not only functional, but highly recognizable. And it's like that for characters. It's like that for buildings, locations. We talked about cars and planes, right? So this is obviously the cast of The Simpsons. And you can see just how specific and unique their silhouettes are. If you really start going into this as a character designer, I find it interesting that the parents have these long heads. The mom's is longer and taller than the dad's is. The kids all have spikes. Bart's are on top of his head and they're shorter and smaller. And both of the girls have these fatter, thicker spikes, right? Which is weird because the mom has no spikes, right? Hers are round. You would think that maybe they would have pushed it all off to the mom. Maybe the girls are supposed to be somewhere in between the mom and the dad. I don't know, but it's kind of interesting. I'd love to go and talk to the character, to Matt Groening, and be like, hey, why didn't you put spikes on the mom's hair or not give the dad any hair? Or, like, it looks like, oh, it's females, but then it's not, right? So kind of interesting little challenges going on in here. Yet, obviously, at this point in time, all super recognizable, right? So power of silhouette, really, really important. And again, not only in what we're going to show you with drawing, but in everything in your life. When you see a chair, your brain sees a silhouette. You understand what the chair is. You understand how to sit in it, right? Okay, well, this is just as important in drawing, which is why we are here, right? These are two drawings from my first book, the Force drawing book. Now, obviously, the orange covered one, the 10th anniversary edition book. And it talks about the importance of silhouette. So here are two silhouettes. This is one that I drew on the left-hand side. And it just shows you, like, look, I can see in the silhouette, what this model is doing, right? It's all clear. We could feel the weight and thickness of her body. We could see how she's standing and what she's doing, how she functions is showing up in the silhouette. This is a drawing by a student named Keith. And I feel sorry for Keith because he's actually really amazing. And I happen to use this one drawing to show, like, don't do this in silhouette. In fact, I think Keith moved on to becoming a 3D animator at Disney Animation, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure that's where he is now. But this drawing, ironically, the model was holding this sphere, and you can see that his hand is inside the shape of his body, right? So it's not a great silhouette because we can't see the arm. If I filled it, the arm and the sphere would disappear, right? And if the point of this is to see the sphere, well, it's not going to happen. Now, does it mean that this is bad all the time? No, you can cheat this. Like if you played with grayscale, you can make the arm lighter and the sphere lighter, make the body darker, so you can make things pop out in the middle. But you want to recognize that from the beginning, if you can get a great silhouette, you don't have to fix things, right? You don't have to think about, I need value now or color to solve the problem that I've set up, unless you specifically set up to have that problem, right? That challenge. Even the hand here. See, I would take this hand. Here, let's draw this. I would take this hand and move it up, right? So why not take this arm and this hand? Let's see, and put that, put it up here, right? There's a stage, I call it a stage. You see this space right here? There's this giant negative space there that we can just stick the hand in. Right, put it up there instead. Get the fingers and stuff in there. And this ball, well, the ball would have either had to been out here or at least break the body to some degree. To be really clear, we could have put this arm like all the way out here like this, you know, holding the ball, right? You know, it could have been like here, and this hand could have been, you know, pointing across on either sides like this, basically, right? That would have been a much clearer silhouette. It could have been done on one side, right? It could have done this. You see, look at my silhouette, right? Like I could have done that. I could have even gotten my face in there and still pulled it over to the side. So plenty of options, right? Plenty of options to fix it. Now, granted, Keith didn't know, to be fair, he didn't know this. I remember him drawing this. This is in the late 90s. And I don't think at that point I was teaching them like, hey, you go manipulate this, right? Go make it work, right? But that's how he could have made it work. Now, recently on Instagram, I happened to post this image on the left, and you'll notice in the photograph that the silhouette's not great. All right, look at the arm over there. It's blocked behind the head. I don't know what's going on. So I made this up, right? I took the arm. I thought it gave a better drive into the shoulder, right? You can see how clear the power is going into that shoulder there, right? So this right here I'm talking about, whoops, right there, like boom, that really drives us down into that shoulder with more energy. And I created this, right? A better silhouette, more negative space, and pushing that silhouette, making sure that that's in there, right? So it just makes for a better pose, right? So don't feel like you're stuck. If your goal, you know, it's like, well, but I'm supposed to try and get it right. If your job in life is to think you're going to find reference for every piece of art you create, and your job is you want to create photorealism, then you're right. You should be working on making sure everything is hyper accurate and you understand what you see and you're super accurate. I can tell you that's like 5% of the art world is going to do that and make that their career and their job is to get everything focused. If you're going especially into entertainment or something, that's not the point. The point is to tell story, clear story, right? So I'm trying to give clear story even in something like the pose. Forget about the script and everything else. Here's just a pose. It could be in a storyboard, for instance. I want to clarify that, right? So positive, negative space, that leads us. So we've talked about silhouette. If you can get a clear silhouette, that means what's happening is when you make a silhouette is called positive shape. Negative shape is what's outside of it, right? So by seeing silhouette, you start to also more clearly see the negative shape around it, right? Because you're seeing the positive, it helps invent the negative. And because of that, that also helps you kind of click in your accuracy, your proportion better. You can see this is another Instagram post, and you can see all these vertical and horizontal lines. That's me measuring out to help see the positive and negative spaces, right? So if I'm over here and I can see this measurement from the shoulder over to the right, and I stop it because I went up to the hip and went up, well, I kind of get this big triangle over here. You see this red triangle now? All right, so I have this triangle over here in the top right, and it's going up to the corner there. And that helps me see the positive compared to the negative against what's vertical and what's horizontal. And that matters because of what we talked about in the last couple of weeks about angles, right? Like all of a sudden that really helps me define angles. So I can now clearly see when I have this, let's see, I want dark blue. When I have this against this, it helps me understand this, right? So positive and negative angles, all this stuff starts to come together, right? Silhouette, the negative space, the measuring, that's how I do it instead of, you know, holding up the pen and like trying to measure with my eye and so on, right? I'm using my sight and mostly positive negative space to get things correct, okay? Any questions so far? I haven't had the chance to look at the chat. Anything? So the function of Comic Court says, so the function of something, for example, a chair, can make that thing memorable by its design. Yeah, most definitely, right? And that's where you start coming into designers, right, who kind of push the boundaries of function and lead us to new silhouettes, right? Yeah, like what's that one chair, the Ames chair, AMES, right, is like world-renowned chair. It's supposed to be super comfortable. It's got the little ottoman. It's from the 60s, I believe. You know, and you can see that it feels like a lounge chair. You can tell just by its design, its silhouette, how it's angled back. You got the footrest, you can tell what it's supposed to do. You can almost tell it's gonna be comfortable by looking at it, right? If you look at an electric chair, all right, doesn't look that comfortable, right? It's like straight up and down, 90-degree angles. You know, it's straps on the arms and legs. It's got a very different function than like an Ames chair, which looks like it's all about relaxing, right? So the function is in the silhouette, right? And you can beef that up. You know, if you're doing design for a video game or a film, you know, you could say, man, the silhouette on this thing needs to be clearer. I've got to show the audience how clear this is, right? If you're drawing a spaceship and you just draw, you know, a pill-shaped thing in the sky, and we've all seen movies where they look like that, but you don't know you don't know how that thing works. So they purposely rob it of function, right? Because it's mysterious. It's like, I don't know what that thing does, but you know, you watch Star Wars, for instance. Star Wars, the ships look functional. It looks like they have jets and stuff on them. Like you could believe that you can understand that thing works. Even something like an Imperial battleship looks triangular. It looks like you could tell what the front and back of it is. And it looks kind of like a normal water-based battleship that would be in outer space, right? Okay, let's see. Silhouette is the biggest shape of an object. Yes, that's Swenley jumping in. Very good. I think in my old tiny animation book with a small amount of pages, it spoke out about silhouettes and understand. Yeah, very, 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 very important. Okay, so let's move on. Silhouettes. So that leads us to force shapes, right? So believe it or not, all three of these things have force shape in them. From a blade of grass to the shape of a seal, which, as those of you that know about the animal drawing book, is like the main force animal I start with, all the way to drawing something as complicated as the human body, right? So to revisit this quickly, for those of you that have never seen me do this, let's zoom in here. The shapes that you don't want, well, the shapes you don't want, I'll draw it. It's in the thumbnail, but I'll redraw it for you. The shapes you don't want are this shape, and this shape. Now, first of all, notice something here. I drew with lines. So when you see an artist drawing, and they're drawing with line, you may not even know that that artist is drawing from a place of shape because they're drawing with lines, right? It's kind of invisible. But they may be drawing with shape, you know, and that's the thing to be aware of. And a lot of artists do, especially those that have some history behind them, some skill behind them, right? So what I really just drew, my point is, even though you saw me draw lines, what I really drew was this. I drew in these toned areas. It's the same thing as me saying, well, let me draw for you shape. And I shape this in. I'm not drawing, I'm almost painting really, right? And then I say, okay, what I'm drawing is that shape. Let me show you. It's like that with line, you see? But we're drawing. So be aware, it's very invisible. It's very invisible, very easy to miss, right? Okay, so those are the bad shapes, right? The good shape that we're looking at and bad and good is obviously super judgmental, but the forceful shape, right? The forceful shape that we're looking for is one that has a curve of force in it, and it's pushed up against typically a straightish line, something like this. So I'm drawing a shape again. You saw me draw two lines, but those two lines invent a shape that looks something like this, you see? And that leads to me, if I wanted to, I can close it off and say, well, you know, that's because here's the shape I'm making, right? It looks like this. Right. And then, you know, and then you can start practicing with this, and you want to have form in that shape. Remember, don't want it to go flat, right? You want to make sure that we understand the structure of things, right? That these shapes have solidity, have mass in them, right? So I know this is extremely oversimplified, but believe it or not, this is the beginning. Watch out for these, right? These are your don'ts, right? Don't do these. Don't. Why? Because they're symmetrical and you can't flow through them, right? Why do we go to this? Because this has an arc in it. And because it has an arc in it, it tells you it's bending and trying to get to the next place, and another arc can pick this up, okay? So there's force in that thing. It's trying to push out, and as it's trying to push out, it gets directed to the next shape, right? We also have structure in it, which is a straight line, which is like kind of holding up and supporting all this power moving around it, okay? So there's lots of different artists that use force shape. You know, I can go through lists and lists of artists that use it. It is not a style choice. It is more about a decision of saying, I guess you could say, let me take it back. It could be a style choice in that what you're deciding is, I want drawings that flow or don't flow. So that decides style. What I want you to be aware of is, doesn't mean that because you've chosen it and you said, I want fluid drawings with shape design, means your drawings have to look the same as everybody else's, because that's not true. An example of this is right here. All right, you have Glenn Keane on the left, you got Mike Mignola on the right. Both of these guys are using shapes, force shapes. On the right, we have Mignola, super graphic, right? Flat, black, graphic shapes, right? You would think there's shape in here, there's force shape. Yeah, there's force shape in here. Look at the straight on the bottom and the curve of the top, right? Look at that leg, look at the bottom leg. It's another one, curve and straight, right? Even the fingers, right? The fingers are pretty awesome, right? They got all this nice flow in them, you see? So even something like this has straight to curve. And in this Glenn Keane drawing of the beast, there's at least 25 plus force shapes in here, right? Just to call one out for you, just to show you what I'm talking about. Here's two quickies, right? Here's a straight, here's a curve, here's a straight, here's a curve, like so, you see? So two force shapes. This horn or tusk, well, horn, is really about a straight and a curve, and then it flips to create a rhythm and puts another straight in there. And now form is inside that. What Keane did is he said, well, I'm gonna give you this edge. That tells you that there's form going on within those two flat shapes, right? So straight to curve, right? And same with Mignola, right? We talked about, I was showing you this leg. Sure, it's built with an angled peak, right? You can see that. It goes like this, and then it goes like this. It has an angle, it comes down. That's really our curve. That I could easily just take that peak and say that's the apex of the curve against the straight, but there's the force shape, you see? So I just want you to be aware that shape has a wide breadth of style opportunity. It doesn't mean if you draw with force shape, all of a sudden, everyone's stuff's gonna look like Glenn Keane, okay? Or Mike Mignola for that matter. All right, here's what students go through at drawingforce.com. They'll do studies of this, right? So these are Arno's, and you can see him studying some of Glenn's work. And he's going around and shaping out parts of the body and giving them different tones, right? Different colors, you see? So you go in and you study it and you start trying to figure out, and you try to see, even in the prose, sometimes those force shapes work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you could see where they break and where they don't. And I always tell the students, go ahead, if you see something's wrong, go fix it. Let's have a conversation about that, right? Let's make it more forceful. All right, last but not least, I talked about the pizza in closing my conversation here. We talked about big to medium to small. How does that work in the body? Well, the biggest shape again is a silhouette. That gives us the overarching shape of the entire body, the function of the body. When you understand force shape shows up in silhouette, right? Which is now, man, now you're cooking, right? Now you start really drawing fast because you see these shapes. Like in this pose, I might start like this. I might say, well, you know, I see the force of the one side of the guy's body, and there's a straight for his rib cage. And I'm going to pull this down over here. And I might start like this. Look how fast I drew the shape of his torso. So it's a forceful shape. It's giving me fluidity. It's telling me, because of the way I kind of peeked down into this side, that a lot of the energies wants to pull its way out of the shape down into that shoulder, right? The pizza is here because after you understand the big stuff, you get into the medium-sized stuff and into the smaller stuff, right? So I might start putting in there, you know, some of that anatomy. I might split this force shape up with this curve for the center of structure. I might start getting anatomy in there, like getting his pectoralis. Notice his pectoralis sweeps up into the deltoid, which gives me a nice another force shape. Right, you can see all this over here. I got straight to curve. Even here, this would probably be my curve, and this would be my straight. Right, it doesn't have to be super strong or obvious either, but that's my straight to curve leading into another straight to curve. So if I pulled the whole thing out, right, you can see I have some weird looking shape that looks like this. Straightish here, little curve, curves over the top. into the deltoid. It's like a giant hook. You see that? So now I have medium and small shapes living within big shapes. You know, and to create a good drawing, of course, I have to understand those forms. If you just go after the shapes and you don't know anatomy, you don't know structure, you don't know perspective, I can promise you they're just going to fall flat on their face, right? So let's see, before I hand off, let's see if there's any questions before I go. There we go. Sorry, I lost there we go. Okay. So it looks like hierarchy as well. Yeah, so the function of something, for example, share, we talked about that. Big, medium, and small with depending opacity of color can also be used for perspective and foreshortening, most definitely. I'm not sure if Elif is Eli, but either way, hello. Hey, Kyla, awesome, I'm glad you're able to make it. No bad shapes, that's right, allowed from here on out. Let's see, if you want to easily place down a thing, use a marker, perfectly grayscale, scribble in some shapes, and then make form on that marker shapes. If you want to easily place down a thing, use a marker, preferably a gray. Yeah, so what Redacted is talking about there is soft touch, really, right? If you use markers, you want to start with lighter gray and then go to medium gray and darker gray, or to black, by giving yourself the opportunity to think and to design, you know, to figure something out. There comes this very interesting moment where you use force and form first, and that helps you define a shape. And then this magic moment happens where you draw a force shape and you start to put some form in it, right? So at the beginning, it's force and form. It's more traditional. That helps you make the shape. And then when you really start doing that enough, like I said, the magic happens and you suddenly have the ability to turn those two things into an understanding of, oh, wait a minute, I can just draw the shape and the shape's going to give me force and form, right? And once you get there, like I said, you are really cooking. At that point, you can draw pretty darn quickly and you can draw shapes, you know, right out of that, right? Okay, so I think that's the end for me. Anyone have any other questions before I go? I just love answering questions. Ethan Becker, where I heard that from. Oh yeah, I was just like watching Ethan's videos. He helped me out a lot. Okay, cool. All right, guys, so I'm gonna hand it off. I'm trying to remember who's going next. I think it was Mritunjay today, right?
Yes.
All right, all yours.
All right. Giving me the power.
Oh, the power, hold on. You know, when I unpack my stuff, I think I have a sword in there somewhere. I'm gonna have to hand it over to you. And then I'll have to ship you guys that same sword so it looks like you can grab it.
Have to bow and you have to keep it in the head.
Knight you, and then yeah, move
Right?
on.
Knight you.
Yeah, exactly, all that fun jazz. All right, hold on, let's see, make co-host, there we go.
Okay. All right, screen. Today I'm actually doing it on the iPad, by the way. So really excited. Let's see how it goes. So I love shape myself. You know, Sven Lee is obviously like the master at it. I call him like shape master for the fun. But so the thing is, you know, the greatest thing that I can say is I just draw the lines, you know, just like this, and basically it's just like that. And people say, oh, you're just like drawing the lines. Basically, I'm just telling you the same thing as like what Mike told, is like we're drawing lines, but we see shape at the beginning, right? So when you are actually jumping to the shapes, like let's say you're moving from the form to the shapes, you're actually seeing shapes in the beginning. It's like, oh, look at this, you know, look at this, and how like those two shapes are actually combining, right? You need to understand the relationship of both of them. Okay, so that is also really important. So not just drawing one shape is enough, but you need to understand like how it's flowing into the other to combine it into like rhythmic, basically like dynamism. To insinuate dynamism, you need to understand the relationship between both two shapes or more. Okay, just like that. The other thing is why, you know, why sometimes, you know, it's kind of interesting. Like one of my mentees is just asking me today, you know, why shapes, you know, why you're using shapes is. So I want to answer that like quickly is like, let's say if you're just like using the rhythms, right? Just like that. It's like, see, I'm just like drawing with these quick lines, right? It's just like all these like fluid lines. But it's good for fluidity, but it seems like, oh, this figure don't have structure, like have no bones inside it. So this is like very, very fluid. And sometimes we call it like the spaghetti figure, so like very, very fluid. It's good, right? It's good, but you just need something else. You just need some straights, to balance it out. But on the other side, if we do just this, right? Imagine we do that, right? Just making the figure out of straights, just like that. See what we end up with. We just end up with dead drawing, basically. I call it a dead drawing because there's no force in it, I would say. There might be some force in here in the shapes as well, but it's kind of bland, awful bland. So what we need to do, we need to just combine like those two figures to balance it out, okay? So I'm going to say, okay, I'm just going to start with this like fluid structure, but I'm going to say, oh, I need like a little straight moment in here, okay, like that. I'm going to say a little bit straight in here as well, just to balance out the structure, okay? And I'm going to say, okay, the leg might be like this, but I just need a little bit more straight in the lower legs to make him stand, okay? Just like that. And yeah, so that's what we're doing. What we are doing is like we're trying to combine both structure and fluidity. So flowing lines give you fluidity, straight gives you structure, okay? So we want to combine them both. Now, let's jump on to some demos. Okay, I'm just going to give you a quick demo. Now, as Swenli mentioned in the chat, the biggest shape of the body they can see is its silhouette. Okay, so you're trying to find, we're just going to depend upon negative spaces and like how clear the silhouette is. Okay, I know this is a kind of an okay silhouette. I mean, look at this gap in here, right there, between that. It's just enough, it's just enough to tell you apart that, where the hand is going and where the leg is going. Okay. So we try to make them a little bit bigger. Okay. So a little bit distance between both of them would make it a more clear silhouette. Something like that. So we'll try it out. All right. So what I see first in the beginning, right? Look at the bend. Look at this bend here. Okay. Just like that. So for you, it might be the bend that I'm looking at, but I'm just looking at this whole shape, right? Just like that. So what I did is I see this bend. So I know that's my force of curve, curve of force. And opposite to that, I said, okay, that's my straight, So see, that's the shape that I look at. That's the shape that I'm looking at right there. Okay, let's make it smaller. My habit of drawing big. All right, so that's my big shape. Now I'm gonna say, I'm gonna plan the legs now, okay? Let's say I just wanna plan the legs. I'm gonna say, okay, here's my one shape. Now, how that other leg is gonna be attached to it, So I wanna connect that leg, but I wanna connect it forcefully. I mean, with force and with shape as well, okay? So they just have a cohesive relationship between both of them. I'm gonna say, okay, here's my curve. I'm gonna say, okay, here's my curve again, right? Here's my curve again. So see that relationship between two forces. And I'm going to say, okay, because here's a curve, that would be my straight. Okay, right there. So that's another shape, okay, that I'm looking for. Now, this is a front to front template, right? So as you can see, the shape is really coming from the function itself. Okay, I am seeing shapes, but I'm seeing shape with function. Is like, okay, if this leg is a front to front, or if this leg is like this, it's a front and leg goes back. Yeah? So these are two different functions that I'm looking for that might fit into the leg, but I'm just aware of it. Okay? So I'm going to say, okay, this leg is front to front because he's pushing into the heel right there, right there. I'm going to push more straight in here. I'm going to say, okay, if this is my curve, that would be my straight. Now, you might say, oh, the silhouette is not coming because look at this massive like bend in here, right? For the hamstrings. And that's what we do, when you want to push in more organicness, what you actually do is you don't copy the shape like this, but you're going to say, okay, I'm just going to push a curve and a straight. And then you're just adding that little bit of muscle, in there, which is like extra amount. You're going to say, okay, I'm just going to add it here. But even in this, I'm looking for that asymmetry because symmetry is bad, right? So I'm looking for that asymmetry in here. So look at this angle that these two curves are making. See, right? So it's not like this. I'm not making an egg, which a lot of people do. I'm just trying to do a asymmetrical core, and you can really see, you can really feel that in the figure right there. All right, so let's try to do this leg here. And that's the same thing I'm gonna do with this leg here. I'm just gonna add that little bit of muscle, which is like the calf muscle in there, bulging across. And there we go. We end up with a fluid, shapy leg, which is a silhouette. According to silhouette, is also good, right? I'm gonna say, oh, this leg here is coming like that. I'm gonna say, okay, here's my curve, here's my straight right there, here's my straight right there. So we end up with a relationship of shapes here. Such a big, very good relationship. I'm gonna say, okay, here's my hand, here's my curve of force. Now see what I just did. I just kind of touch it in here. I just touched the knee with the curve of my arm. I'm gonna say I'm gonna just make it a distant, so a little bit gap in there to make it a better silhouette. This is again, you can say it's a small, like medium shape living inside that big shape. So here's a shape of the whole torso, but I'm saying, okay, here's the deltoid, like a little shape, living in there. It's kind of cute. All right, there we go. So just like very, very clear and simple shape for the arm as well. And for the other arm as well, right? So see what I'm drawing, like I'm drawing really fast here. It's like, oh, this is a curve, that's a straight. See, that's what I see. All right, now time to add the head and the neck. I'm gonna say, oh, here's my curve for the neck. And here's my curve for the face there. Right? You see right there. There it goes. There goes my shape. So see, that's how you do it. Basically you're just looking for that function. First of all, you're just figuring out how the curves work, and yeah, I'm just putting straights opposite to that and adding the muscle bulge if you're feeling that out, if you're seeing into the figure there, and you're gonna basically end up with a shapy drawing. I'm also like worrying about this is like, okay, look at that angle here. I just have to do this. So see that hand is also like a four shape. So I did that. It's a curve, that's a straight. And see, I come up with a hand shape. Really, really powerful. All right, something like that, so we can just quickly shape it out. Sorry, I mean, highlight it out with some colors. So I can put it here. Let's say, so there goes my shape. Oh, before even that, I'm just going to tell you like the whole silhouette, like how it really works. I'm going to tone it with all this with gray. That's the shape. That's the shape there. Right. I'm just joining it in gray, nothing special. There goes another shape. Right. That's again a shape of the arm. That's a shape. That's a shape of the head there. So it's all toning. So that's how it works. Now, if we remove the line, I know I have to do some cleanup on that. But look at this. What's happening? Yeah. So look at this. Look at the shape here. Well, what I'm just saying is, it's clear. Function wise, that silhouette is actually kind of clear. Obviously, I have to do a little bit of cleanup in there, but it works. All of a sudden it works. So now what we're gonna do is we can just say, okay, here's the shape of the torso. Now I can actually highlight them out. It's like, here's a shape. Okay, let's do a yellow one or a little bit orange one. Here's one shape in there. Okay. Let's say arm as well. Here's one shape. Let's say here's one. Just have to do this. Okay, here's one shape in here. Okay. So by this way, you can actually highlight the different shapes and you can explain it to somebody like how this relationship is working, just like I'm explaining to you right now. And that's how it goes, so simple. Now what you're going to do is you can insert form in there. Okay, so I'm going to say, okay, let me see my Apple Pencil. Can you just, can you guys just wait? My Apple Pencil is just, messing around. Just give me a second.
So I had, while you're doing that,
Mhm.
I had a question from Simeon. He said, some teachers use an exercise drawing angles and straight lines only to start as an introductory exercise. Do you see it as setting up a bad habit? So I was saying, Simeon, on drawingforce.com, we actually do have students do something called a gravity guide, which is almost like a flour sack with angles for arms and legs, because I do think angles are really important. But then we immediately do that as like a study. And then immediately after that, we go to drawing the figure with fluidity. We don't try to build on top of the gravity guide. I think what a lot of teachers do is say like, hey, let's plan out these angles and then use that same drawing to try to get force into them. I think that's really difficult. It's hard to see, as I wrote to you, it's hard to see past what's right in front of you, right? So, you know, I just went through this thing where we were buying a house and part of it hadn't been constructed yet. And, you know, it's like having to stand there looking at 2x4 walls, right? And having to imagine, you know, what is this house going to look like? Some people are better at that ability than others. So when you're drawing and you put something down and you start with all these angles, I think it's hard to kind of break out of that. All of a sudden, the rest of the drawing like resides on that, right? It tries to live on that as well. And then it's hard to get rid of it, right? It's hard to get rid of it. It's hard to get past it. All of a sudden, the whole drawing is angular and you have a stiff drawing. You're like, I wonder why it's stiff. Well, probably because you started with angles, right? So just be aware of it. Angles are extremely important. And yet, I just don't think it's a great starting point. Maybe as a little analysis on the side, you just want to make sure you're aware of some angles. But when you start really drawing the figure, I recommend starting with the fluidity of things and trying to understand the whole picture and how it all connects. Okay.
Yep. So that is it. So we got some time, or should we pass on to Sunday?
It's ready for Swenley, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, sure.
For Swenley.
So hope you enjoyed, guys. I did my best, but not as good as Swenley. But yeah, I tried.
It's awesome. It's awesome drawing.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed. Let's give the power to Swenley now.
You have to give me power, Mike.
Here it is.
You can send this word now.
pass the Cintiq pen over to you, and give Mr. Swenley He-Man control, and make you a co-host. There you go. Now you're on the talk show as well. We're gonna have to get like a 7-piece band or something soon to play music for us while we're drawing.
Yeah, so let's see. I have about 10 minutes or so left. So let's get into it. Hopefully technology will cooperate. Oh yeah, now it's reacting. All right, so shape. Of course, Mrityunjay gave a wonderful introduction to for shape. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to introduce a quick trick to get more volume in there, which is, and I don't remember if we touched upon this last week with form, but it's wrapping. Now, so first of all, I'm seeing the forces. You know, I can see this S curve here, and it's like pushing out on the rear end right here. So this creating what you call a reverse S curve. Now, once I know where the curves are of force, I know on the other side is a straight. You know, I think I'm going to like push a little bit more of design in here as well, meaning that I'm going to really use those straights and curves, you know, and kind of like stylize it a little bit. So let's see how that goes. So I have the torso. I can see the top plane of the torso right here. You know, and if the figure was wearing a belt, it would be around here on the top of the pelvis. So I have my 4 shapes and I can use wrapping to get some really quick volume. Same here, bottom of the pelvis volume right here, and around here, halfway the torso, we would have the bottom of the rib cage. So in this case, she has a stop on. So this also gives us like a natural wrapping line, showing the form. So this is super important. Like shape comes from force and form. Like we saw with the silhouettes at the beginning, like the shape has to be based on function. It's called a force shape. So its force or its function comes first. And when you create a form, you automatically create a shape out of it. It doesn't have to be necessarily a force shape, but be aware that even if I draw, let's say, like a cylinder, I draw a cylinder, let's say this plane is facing us, So I was focusing on drawing a geometric form, but look what happened. Now that form creates a shape. It has a silhouette, because it has mass and volume. So like Mike mentioned at the beginning, it's common for students to want to start with shape, but if it's not based on function and form, it's not going to work and it's going to be flat. That's guaranteed. So let's see. And shape-wise, what I'm seeing is I see the figure like puzzle pieces. I can see how the shape of the thigh fits into the pelvis. We can push a straight curve here. And this looks like a front to front. How do I know that? If I think of this as an arrow, once I reach here, it directs me down and towards the heel right here. So the foot is a 4 shape. Like all the weight is on this foot, so I want to darken the line. I want to plant it firmly on the ground. So I have my curve of force here. I have my straight. I usually like to use wrapping at the joints, like the wrist and ankles, to give me some form. I can use wrapping here as well, begin with. And talking about shape, like one little thing to notice that I often see students missing is notice that the ankle gets wider just before merging into the foot. Like notice the shape right here at the ankle joint. That's important, if you want the ankle to look a bit more real. Okay, so let's find the farther edge there of the pelvis. And this leg right here. So, and as I'm drawing this leg, I'm just like on this side, I'm imagining where is that socket and how does that thigh shape fit into that. I want good structure. And even as I'm drawing the shape, I'm thinking about the direction of that, the shape, it's going away from us. So I'm using wrapping to show you that, but when drawing shape, I'm always thinking about the volume in the form of wrapping on the inside. Okay, so this one is pushing back, and again, wrapping at the ankle joints. You can get a quick shape here. The foot, again, this is like pressing against the ground, so I want to darken the line here to show that. Then we have the directional force of the heel and the shape, and you can see a little bit of the bottom of that foot here. And so this leg is going that way, and this one is quite flat. If we were to like wrap bands around that leg, the bands would look like this. So it's almost like a side view, and this one is kind of like going down. Like that, can connect the feet of the figure with straight lines to create a base, so it's not just floating on the page. And this already feels well balanced. And design-wise, I can see that the shape of the gluteus muscle here is quite angular. I can see these clear angles right here. So I start getting that here. Let me get the rest here. I'm drawing the center line over the top plane at the front, and it continues all the way down. Now I can see the turning edge, also the corner of the form. I can see this needs to be wider. Like if I look at the top, notice the width here on the side. It needs to be a lot wider than what I started with. Okay, so from here we connect into the deltoid, and the arm feels like it's working like this, like the arc is here at the top. So straight to curve, and use wrapping at the joints to see the direction of the arm. And in this case, the fist is a continuation of that arc. So this is my force curve here, and then can add a straight here at the bottom. So very simple and abstract. Start adding wrapping in here, to get a sense of the hand and the fingers. So by combining shape and wrapping, you can get a functional and well-structured drawing pretty quickly. Like I've been drawing model sheets for a video game all week this week, and this is primarily what I've been using, shapes and wrapping for quick structure, to make sure that the character works structurally in all angles, because it has to be created and as a 3D model. I can hand it off and the structure doesn't make sense, because he will send it right back to me and tell me to figure it out. So structure is super, super important. I get a hand here. This is my straights. And the reason I chose this pose is because there are clear negative shapes. Like notice all the negative shapes, like puzzle pieces. Right, we have this negative shape right here. We have this negative shape right here as well. Let's see, we go from the back. I can see how the neck is stretching out. So I'm looking at the rhythm between the upper back and the face. So I can see this to this. Now this is like pushing the face forward. I'm looking at the negative shape to place the bottom of the chin right here. You can see the jaw. The head itself is a simple four shape. Like notice, here's my curve, and I have another curve here on the other side. So very easy way to set up the head. And for the head, there's another thing that came up a lot this week. Like the biggest shapes or forms of the head that you have are, first of all, you have the cranium and you have the face and the jaw. And then the cylinder of the neck needs to insert right here on the bottom of the cranium. And then you get like a well-structured basis for the head. So this is a good start. Next I would add anatomy. If I draw the clavicle, I see that I would need to make this arm just slightly longer. It's a bit too short. I can add the clavicle here. So now that I have the big shapes, I can start adding the smaller shapes of the anatomy, like Mike mentioned. And one simple way to memorize the muscles is memorizing their shape. Let's see, so the shoulder is pulling here, and that merges into the pectoralis. Keep in mind that females have pectoralis muscles as well. It's obvious that it sounds, sometimes students forget that, and that the breast sits on top of the pectoralis, kind of like at the halfway point most of the time. Let's see. So I see it's almost time. So yeah, to get a quick way to get a form when you're drawing shapes is using wrapping. You combine that, and it's a very fast way to get volume, and then you can refine it further, be a bit more precise with the structure. let's see, you can just add a little bit of the hamstrings here, just like Mrityunjay did earlier. And the calf. Now, so notice that I still keep clear negative shapes when I'm adding the smaller ones. All right, right on time. So I'm going to hand it over to Mike.
All right, thank you, Swenley. Thank you, Mrityunjay. Yeah, some good questions out there today. I hope you guys enjoyed SHAPE. Next week, we're going to talk about anatomy and seeing anatomy, and probably just some call outs here and there about it. And that's it. And then after that, we're going to move on to some other subjects. So like I said, next week will be our last week on the concept of how important it is to see, right? I want to, just as a reminder, these last few weeks have all been about, you know, being able to see well is what leads to the understandings that we're talking about. And by the way, all the stuff that I've been talking to you about and teaching you, and what Swenley and Mrityunjay are teaching you, is based on starting from a place of seeing, you know, seeing what you are looking at, right? Two different things. All right, take care, guys. Everyone have a great weekend, have a great week, and we will see you next Friday. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.